In the previous video, we talked about something extremely crucial to economy picking development, and a thing that you can actually use to get results way faster than anybody around you. Why is this possible? Why is this not clickbait and just empty promises? Because 99.9% of all people practice in the least of effective ways. So Klaus, you know the right ways. Listen to me. Yes, I do. Because I did everything wrong and I got almost zero results. So I was a special kind of stupid that had to find another way because I had zero talent. So I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just saying there is a better way and nobody knows about it because we just do the thing that works most often. We have the most amazing brain and it really tries to give us what we want. Even though when we're practicing, we're giving it the least effective environment in which to learn. Seriously, that's what we do. That's what practicing is. On a broad scale, right? Because what do we do when we practice? Well, we take the whole idea of practicing from sports, from trying to hit the goal with a football, right? If you play soccer and you try to work on your kicks, how do you do that? Well, you just try, right? You kick the ball and you see what happens. And then you try to adjust depending on what result you get out there. And that's trying. And that works wonderfully for that kind of environment. But it takes time, right? It takes really long time because you have to try and fail, try and fail, try and succeed, try, fail, 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 succeed. And then you learn from the successes you have. Say, oh, what did I do right? How did that feel? And then we apply the same thing to guitar practicing, which is infinitely stupid. Which is like stupidity in a nutshell, right? Oh, this works over here. Let's take this extremely detailed, extremely delicate, extremely accurate, that demands so highly precision work. And let's apply the same brute force strategies to this. That's the mistake. So let's be real scientific about what goes on when we're trying to economy pick so we can have the right focus. Because if you can direct your brain down to the real challenges of economy picking instead of just trying and then having all kinds of little minute details going on that we're not conscious about even, that the brain struggles with and we can't, why can't I freaking, I can't get the flow right? And we have no idea why. Use the frontal lobes. Use the uniquely human part of your brain that's extremely intelligent in all people, except the ones who hit their head on something hard once, right? But so what is actually going on when we try to economy pick? Well, as we try to play a run, say 3 notes per string down, right? We just try to do it. We just go up, down, up, down, up, down, up with our pick. But what determines how easily you get from string to string? Picking depth, right? Picking depth. If this is your string, let's see if we can really, like a microscope, go in and say, this is a string, right? How does that, yeah, well, you can see that. This is the string, right? And you have a pick. And this is like, what is that? That's like 1/10 of a millimeter if we're on the E string, depending on what string thickness you have, right? But let's say your pick approaches the string here. And you try to push through the string. Let's say that this position exactly, this kind of picking depth, because if you take it even deeper here, right, it's another resistance. If you take it all the way here, down here, you can't get through the string, right? So this is your picking depth. Let's say that is the resistance of the string at this, please follow me, even though, public school, you know, the resistance of that you encounter when you try to push the pick through the string is X, right? Then what happens if you take it up just one small bit here, like say 2/10 of a millimeter? Don't know what that is, and if you're from the US, you have a different way of expressing distances and stuff like that. But let's say this is like 2/10 of a millimeter. This is something that is uncontrollable when you try, uncontrollable. And if you don't focus on your picking depth even, you have no idea, right, that is an issue. The brain's just trying. It was easier last time when I kicked the ball like that, right? It doesn't work. So this picking depth would then be, half X. Let's just say that. There's probably a very detailed formula for how the resistance evolves, depending on how low you pick. If you go even deeper, it becomes greater. If you go higher, it becomes less. And what are we doing when we're trying? We have all kinds of picking depths. right? Especially because it's not about 1 or 2 millimeters. It's about tenths of millimeters. Like, you know, the string is so freaking, it's so small, right? Just imagine if this was the E or the B string, right? It's nothing. You know, if you just have a slight little, even a variation in picking depth that you can't even feel, right? That can still mean that you have twice the resistance. And when you're trying to do this from one string to another, right? It's crazy how much variation you have in your picking depth. So what are you learning when you're trying? Because if you have to, let's say you had to lean into something here, right? There's a wall here made of cardboard, or not cardboard, but wood of some kind. And you know, if you push hard enough, it breaks, right? And you have to do it, but you have to not fall over. If that is the case, you have to know exactly when it breaks, right? Because that's the only way, you know, this is the amount of force, and this is when it breaks. And so I can hold a little back, so I don't go, blah, and then you fall, right? And you know, you have to do the same thing over here and here. You have to know exactly when your string, or the brain has to know, because you can't, you know, you don't have the capacity to be conscious about that. The brain has to know exactly how much force do I have to apply to the pick against the string in order to pass it. If it doesn't, you're going to have an uneven sweep picking string shift, which is what we use in economy picking, right? It's impossible to play an even sweep picking run if you don't do this, if you don't have control over this. So what are you practicing? Preferably using the practice focus we established the last time, right? Go back and watch that video if you haven't. What are you really practicing? Well, what is happening when you practice? The brain gets better at producing the same picking depth every single time. If you succeed in learning economy picking at the highest level, that's what you've learned. But nobody goes around and says, hey, I got the most consistent picking depth of all, right? We don't say that because that's not a success. You know, we don't think about that. But if we did, then instead of practicing economy picking, we would practice picking depth, right? And how do we do that? Let's come up with some cool strategies for practicing picking depth using the method from the last time and some extra little insights to how to actually do this. Because how would you go, have this be here. How would you go about doing this? Just think about it. Well, I don't know. I can't, you know, control tenths of millimeters. I can't do that. That's just too accurate, right? So how do we do it? How? How do you know what picking depth you have? Well, depending on the resistance I get, but then it's too late, right? It's too late to adjust your picking depth because you just picked the string to feel what it was. Get my point? But so what do? Well, we take the string and then we say, can you see this? Yes, you can. We take this here. Let's see if I can get some. That's it. This is the string again. And then I take my pick and then I graze the string. All right? I just touch it, just in the surface. If I can do this every single time, then I have a feedback loop from the string that tells me you have the same picking depth. If I can do, just say I have a open string here, right? See, now I'm not picking it. Now I'm just deepening my pick. And then I start touching the pick. Don't go deeper. Right? See, now the brain is learning. Oh, that's why the string is. That's why the string begins. It's a feeling. I hit the string, and then it's connected in the brain. It's the feeling of just hitting the string is connected to a feeling. So now I have a reference point. I have a benchmark that I can work with. And then I can practice picking in the surface. Because if I do that, then I know my picking depth. If I do that all the time. Right? Which also means pick as silently as you can. Right? So now I have a reference point. Instead of moving around down here in the picking depth and not knowing exactly what you're doing, now you have a reference point. That doesn't mean that you also always have to pick very silently, and that's the technique that you build. But if you can learn to do this when you economy pick, then you can certainly learn to increase it a little bit, because now you have control. Because now you've been practicing having control, because you get a direct feedback. If you go a little bit too low, you flop the string. It increases dramatically if you just go 1/10 of 1 millimeter deeper into the string, so you can feel that. Right? Okay. So the last little point here is, of course, this. Right? Before we move on here. This. What is this? The tip of the pick. The picks I'm using is a big stubby Dunlop. And I love those because I can hold them. They got like a cavity in the middle of them. I'm not holding my thumb exactly and index finger exactly where the cavity is, but it still gives me a better grip on the pick. And the cool thing about it is it has, if you see it from the side, it's pretty thick, meaning it's inflexible. But then it has like a sharp tip, like a knife almost. And I love that because it allows me to control the sound more than if I had a round tip. This is like a purple Dunlop, you know, these just regular 2 millimeter purple Dunlop. They have like a round tip. They're also completely inflexible, so I get the right, you know, amount of control. But they are not so, you know, if you vary your picking depth to the string, they don't react as mercilessly as the sharp tip. The sharp tip will just, if you go just a little bit down, the resistance becomes very, you know, increased a lot. But if you have a round tip, you know, it slides over. Like imagine picking with a tennis ball. That would be really, you know, you can't really go too deep because it always slides off. So I warmly recommend, if you're new to this, that you don't start with a pick that is sharp in the end, but is thick, so it has the ability to be round. And those purple Dunlops are really good at that. I used that, you know, for a couple of years when I started learning alternate picking and economy picking. I went back to it a couple of times when I wanted to work on my picking technique, because the cool thing is that once you go from a rounded tip, a fat rounded tip, to a sharp tip, it isn't that much of a difference once you've learned and you mastered the round tip. So, but you can struggle with this to get results, and it's really hard because it's merciless. So those are the insights. So just if you take the strategy from last time, you'll find that suddenly the whole challenge is in your hand and not in leaning up against the wall and having it break, leaning the pick and then breaking it. That's not the challenge anymore, because there's so little resistance. So it's really first learning the movements of your right hand with very little resistance. Yeah, right? So it's like, you just move through it. So you have to control it over here and can't lean up against the string and then, right? So it becomes a totally different discipline. And as you then learn to play a little bit louder, you know, as you become really good at playing in the surface, then the resistance increases. But now it's a controlled process. That's a key secret. Use it. Because once you go practice now, your brain is just going to continue in the same freaking loop you always did. Like with me, you know, I practice so much that when I go back to practice, even though I have new insights, I still do the same old thing. Because, you know, we got this habit brain running. So you need to break it by remembering it. Picking depth, write that with big letters on the wall, or, you know, make sure you can't forget when you sit down to practice to have focus on it. It's really a game changer. It's a total game changer to practice like that. But I promise you, once you've been doing it for a while, you feel the added sense of control. You get daily results in this way. You really feel the results. And you can hear the results on a daily basis. Depending on how much you practice, of course. 5 minutes won't do it. So, have fun with it, because the most amount of fun you can have when you practice is getting results, and this will give you results. But it has a period of time where you have to really focus on it, not to go into your old practicing routine, to get the results, so you learn that this is really beneficial, and you get all the pleasure from getting daily results, and then you're hooked. Then you've broken the habit of doing the least effective thing. See you in the next video.